As children, most of us were taught to follow the golden rule. Treat others like we'd like to be treated. But this doesn't work when we're crossing generational boundaries. Here at Psygenx, we can help you to be successful no matter what generation you're dealing with. Hi, I'm Dr. Jeff. I'm a Gen Xer. I'm not a baby boomer. Those same kids that were wearing their anarchy coats, skateboarding around your neighborhood, breaking the windows out of your cars, they grow up, they get jobs, and they come talk to you. This is what we look like all grown up. I know it's not pretty, but here we are. I got 4 kids. The oldest is in college. The youngest is still in preschool. So I'm interested in generations, both as a worker and as a parent. Today we're going to be talking about generations at work and unlocking the power of generational psychology. A few disclaimers before we get started. This presentation is rated PG-13. Parental guidance suggested. We are going to be making a few sex and drug references because we are talking about all the 4 different generations, and people do some wild and crazy things when they're not at work, and we're going to be discussing those. But if you can stick with me and have a little fun, then this presentation is for you. I hope you enjoy the ride. When most people talk about generations, they talk about them in a linear fashion. One generation follows the next. Silent generation, followed by boomers, followed by Gen X, followed by millennials. The theory I'm going to share with you today talks about generations as cyclical, repeating one after the other. There are 4 distinct generational archetypes or generational personalities: the hero, the artist, the prophet, and the nomad. Each one of these generational personalities has a unique story to tell and a unique role in society. These generations interact, and when you stack them all together from oldest to youngest, society actually moves and changes in predictable ways. It's one of the great powers of this theory. The slide that you see here is the generational Loch Ness Monster. It describes birth years starting in 1901 and going to 2004. Take a moment and find yourself on the slide. What you see here for birth years are a little bit different than what you see in the popular press. For example, if you look at the prophet archetype, or the baby boomers, they're typically described as 1946 to 1964. I have them as 1943 to 1960. And the reason for that is those demographers out there on the popular press are talking about when people are born. And that's an important part of this theory. But what I'm describing here is where the generational divides are between them. So how people think, act, and behave. And for this, boomers are described as 43 to 60. Those people that are born in those years are more like baby boomers than they are nomad or artist archetype, or silent and Gen X. So you can see here each one of these generations lining up to a title that you've seen in the popular press. So we have the GI generation as a hero archetype, followed by the silent generation, who are artists, followed by the boomers, who are prophet, followed by nomad, Gen X, and last but not least, another hero, millennial. And you'll notice that the hero repeats. And each one of these generations throughout time have followed that exact cycle: hero, artist, prophet, nomad, hero, and so forth. And actually, if I were to draw that presentation, that slide for 400 years, you'd see exactly that same pattern. And so if you want to understand how these millennials, for example, are going to behave throughout their life cycle, you can study generations that followed before them, like the hero generation, and understand what kind of role they're going to play in society. Another thing that you should know, and this starts to explain why me and so many of my other colleagues who are Gen Xers have these kind of bad attitudes and why we're cynical and so forth, is that there's a dominant and recessive generation. Those archetypes that are dominant, the prophets and the hero archetype, they're group-oriented. They connect with their generation. They're proud of their generation. If you're a boomer, you're proud to be a boomer. You're a millennial, you're proud to be a millennial. So when you come up with an idea at work, let's say you're a boomer, you think of a great idea in the shower, you get up nice and early, you drive to work, you get there before the boss, you talk it over with a few of your boomer colleagues, and if it's a good idea, you go for it. At the end of the day, you get in your car, you flip on the ignition, out pops a Rolling Stones CD that's been in your car for the last 10 years. You don't know what kind of junk is on the radio today, and you don't care. You know that no good music has occurred since the late 60s or early 70s. You're a boomer after all. Likewise, if you're a millennial, you want to know, hey, where are the hottest clubs? Should I get a Twitter account? What kind of app should I download on my iPhone? You don't ask us old people, Gen Xers and boomers. You check it out with your millennial peers, and if they think it's cool, you go for it. And you're dominant in the press, and so when there's an article about what the generations are up to, they're usually talking about boomers or millennials. They don't give a lot of coverage to those of us in the recessive generations, the artist and the nomad archetypes. We're not that favored. We actually don't connect that much to our generation. We kind of feel like we're alone, out there taking care of ourselves and maybe our families and a few close friends. But we really don't connect to our generation or any other one. And we kind of whine and complain, right? And those folks that are in the dominant generations, they tend to be in positions of power and control how a culture happens. So how do we get even with the man? How do we rebel? Well, we wear our hair funny, we dress in funny garb, we put together stand-up comedy routines. You got your Jon Stewarts, your Stephen Colberts out there commenting on the dominant society and trying to knock you down a peg. But we're not like the other generations. We don't really, in the recessive generations, we don't flex our collective muscles. So when we're mad at our politicians, for example, what do? Well, we don't vote. That's what we do. And if those politicians don't change their wicked ways, well, in the future, we don't vote twice as hard. So take that. And so those of you that are maybe starting to watch this presentation are worried that somehow I'm going to get all these Gen Xers riled up. It's never going to happen, all right? We just don't do that. We're not joiners, right? Where's the fight going to come? Who's going to push out the baby boomers who are currently in charge today? Well, it's going to be the next dominant generation. It's going to be their own kids, the millennials. That's where the fight's going to come from. Here at Psygenx, we're working to unlock the power of generational psychology to help you and your business succeed. You can reach me via email, on our Psygenx.com homepage, or on our Facebook fan page.